The latest fuel stocks update shows that New Zealand continues to have sufficient levels of petrol, diesel and jet fuel. We currently have 56 days cover of petrol, 45 days cover of diesel and 47 days of jet fuel. This fuel is either in the country now, within our sovereign waters, or on its way and due to arrive within 3 weeks. Our fuel importers continue to report no material issues with future orders or future shipments. You will notice that these stock levels are slightly down on the last update, with diesel and jet fuel being down by just over 3 days. As I said on Monday, it is normal for stock levels to fluctuate as fuel is distributed around the country and then replenished by incoming imports. A change in stock levels by 3 or more days since the previous update is one of our 6 criteria for an assessment on whether to shift our response phases. But as with previous instances of stock levels being down by more than 3 days, officials have again recommended that a formal assessment is not necessary at this time. Therefore, we are staying at phase 1 of the National Fuel Response Plan. But the ceasefire is fragile and the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed, so the risks to New Zealand's fuel security is still elevated. And while we remain at phase 1, we're actively preparing for the possibility that we need to move up the response phases in the event of widespread fuel shortages. We're not there yet, and we hope to never get there, but as a prudent and responsible government, we know it is better to have a plan you don't use than to need one and to be caught short. Prices at the pump remain high, and I would love to be able to tell Kiwis that those prices will come down, but that is not something that anyone can accurately predict given the unpredictability and the volatility of the situation in the Middle East. The price issue will impact our economy as more of people's budgets is being spent on fuel and less on discretionary items, but the far greater risk to our economy is a fuel shortage. And that is why we're shoring up our supply and as a top priority and job number 1. There are several ways that we are doing that, with lots of work underway by ministers and officials across government. We've already announced that we're aligning fuel specifications with Australia, that we're investing in the acceleration of additional diesel storage tanks at Marsden Point, and both of these measures improve our ability to bolster fuel supply. You've heard us mention about commercial proposals to support the procurement of additional fuel supply over and above our current stock holdings, and the government is currently working through those options and we'll have more to say about that shortly. Our government is also exploring options for removing non-essential regulatory barriers to help improve fuel efficiency. Proposals have come in, as you know, from industries and the public via the Ministry of Regulation, and these are now being assessed and prioritised based on the likely impact on fuel use. These proposals include common sense things like allowing heavy vehicles to carry heavier loads to enable more freight to be moved per trip and therefore supporting greater fuel efficiency. Again, we're working through the options and ministers will have more to say soon, but those are just some of the things that we're working on in the background to shore up fuel supply amid the global disruption, and we'll keep the public updated as that work progresses. With that, happy to take any questions you may have. Sorry? How concerned are you about the departure of Asia and regulation? We talk to our fuel importers each and every day. We have very good visibility, as you know, over 3 weeks' supply of fuel that's in the country on its way here. Typically it takes 3 weeks to get from port of origin to New Zealand, but we also are talking to our fuel importers who have given us great confidence around confirmed orders out to the end of May and actually good planned orders right through until June. I think it's the first time we've delayed the shipment of fuel to New Zealand. It's not material at all. It's quite normal practice. If there is any minor movement, and I think it might have been one case where we've had something less than an hour or something before the order was reordered. That's just the nature of the industry and how orders are taken for fuel all around the world, and has always been that way. Not that we've seen. I mean, as you've all seen media reports, there hasn't been a significant increase in ships moving freely through the Hormuz Strait, and that's what we need to be able to encourage all parties to be able to get the free flowing of those ships, the freedom of navigation, so that those supplies can get ultimately out to refineries. You're saying that there's 2,000 pieces from that you received on phase 3 and phase 4. Who's going through that, and how are they going to do that? Look, right from the beginning, as I said, we've learnt the mistakes of COVID. We're not going to do things to industry, we're going to work with industry. So we have worked with we've got a number of groups of major user groups, business groups that have actually been contributing with common sense ideas about any regulatory barriers and obstacles that we could be removing in the event of phase 3 or phase 4. MB, yes. Our officials, MB, will be summarising all of that now.
The IMF is warning that the conflict could trigger a global recession with global growth falling by 2%. What's the government doing to prepare for that?
Well, again, as we've talked from the beginning, we know there'll be an impact on inflation, we know there'll be an impact on growth. What we're doing is minimising that impact, and that's why we've got timely, targeted, temporary support to people, but we're also keeping an eye on the long term to say we do not want to repeat the COVID mistakes where the cash bazooka got flowing around. And it led to high levels of inflation and maxed out our debt. That is not a place we're going to again. So we're acting economically responsibly and prudently to make sure that we keep an eye on the long-term future for New Zealand and its economic situation, as well as targeted support to people who need it.
The US is saying that a bit of short-term pain is fine for some long-term security. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think our COVID lesson is we had a lot of short-term gain and a lot of long-term pain, and that is the experience out of COVID, and we are not repeating that again.
But just to the question, the US says the short-term pain we're suffering at the moment is worth it for long-term security. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, what I agree with is we want this resolved as quickly as possible. We want the conflict, we want the parties negotiating. I know ceasefire negotiations, we want ceasefire holding, we want the parties negotiating and negotiating settlement. Sorry, Henry.
MBIE,
Sorry?
MBIE somewhat reduced the much share of too much retail bus ships. They're saying they've had data shared of their commercially to be kept secret. So they're only showing 3 weeks further than the last update. So we now have 3 weeks from last Sunday. A lot of people are kind of wanting more certainty. Businesses, they're asking for just a little bit more detail so they can plan for next month to know that those ships are coming. Do you think the public interest is not kind of overriding some of that flexibility now? Could we not get more data about exactly when the ships are due in May rather than just the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, look, I mean, I stand by our data. We've had very good engagement with the fuel importing companies right from day one. And they are sharing a lot of commercially sensitive information to us. That's giving us a very good visibility over the picture. We're reporting, our fuel stocks on a Monday, and a Wednesday, as you well know. 3 weeks is the frame because it's about what's in country, what's on its way here, and what's left source of origin, and that actually is coming into New Zealand. But as I said before, we have very good confidence from our fuel companies that they have confirmed orders in place until the end of May, and they actually have planned orders in place throughout well into June. And that's giving us confidence that actually we see no risk of future fuel disruption. So that's why we report on Monday and Wednesday. That's why I'm giving you this update now to say to you, look, we're well within our supplies as we look out 3 weeks of fuel that's on its way, but we also have visibility through our arrangements with those fuel importers beyond that too.
Could you not even say how many ships? Could you not even say how many ships are coming in May?
Sorry?
How many tankers are coming in?
We have a list of that. We use starboard marine information, but more importantly, we have a lot of commercially sensitive information that others don't have through our engagement with the fuel importers as well.
Where is that in terms of the government's security place for fuel?
Well, where we're at the moment is our priority is to make sure we build a strategic diesel reserve. That's the 90 million tank at Marsden Point. That will be operational from when we push the button a week or so ago within an 8-week period. And as I said, we also have ongoing commercial conversations right now with a number of unsolicited bids to get that additionality and that extra diesel that we want in those tanks.
So in terms of, I think people are going to receive a secure storage space to put the diesel offshore.
We've got our 90 million tank as our priority at Marsden Point to make sure we fill that, and that's why the alternative unsolicited bids are being considered. There's a number of scenarios and options that we're considering and thinking about, but our primary focus is we want those tanks built within 8 weeks and we want fuel inside those tanks.
It's only 8 days, so is there scope to secure more storage somewhere near New Zealand sooner?
Well, again, as I've said to you, I want to reassure New Zealanders, we have a fuel supply. We have no risk of disruption to our future fuel supply right out. As I said, we've got confirmed orders out to the end of May. We've got planned orders well through June. We're in a good position. We just want to secure additionality, particularly around diesel, and we think the tank is a first good place to start. Sorry, Jenna.
What involvement personally did you have in nominating Rod Drury for a nomination?
None.
Did you sign that off as chair of Geopolitical?
In terms of nominate, I didn't nominate him, no. But I'm just
What's your relationship like with him?
Well, he's someone I've known for a little bit because I've mixed in business circles with him, and but I just say to you, I'm aware there's investigations ongoing at his previous company, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on that at this point.
Have you heard any of those allegations before?
No. I saw the media reports just like you this morning. It's the first I heard of the story. Yes. Sorry?
Have you been approached by any Pacific leaders to provide assistance amid the fuel shortage?
Not at this time, I have spoken to, as you know, the Prime Minister of Tonga and the Prime Minister of Samoa. I've also spoken to Prime Minister Rambuka as well, and at this point we haven't been asked for anything specific. If we were, we're happy to assist and do what we can, but at this point, in my last conversations, there's been no ask from us.
New Zealand's providing transport to the Pacific Islands for a leaders meeting in August. Should this situation get worse, can that affect transportation of leaders to Palau?
Look, I think that's hypothetical. I had a good meeting with the President of Palau just 2 nights ago in Auckland. We've been hosting him here in New Zealand, but at this point we don't see any risk of that. As I said, there is no risk to any fuel disruption for us, and that's a good thing. But of course, August is a long way away.
Can you give us some specifics on that ship?
Sorry.
Can you give us some specifics on the ship that was delayed? Like what type of fuel it was?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm only aware of it in a cursory thing because Jamie brought it up. But the issue was, as I understood, there was an hour delay and it was quickly. You've got to understand, in the refineries in Singapore, it's quite normal practice. It's a bit like aviation fuel as well. That when you're securing that supply and when it's locked and loaded, it's a technical thing and a very minor thing and not a significant thing at all. It happens in normal, irrespective of a fuel crisis. It happens on a daily basis with fuel importers around the world.
I guess the question is why is MBT insignificant enough to update the public? It's just a
Well, it's just making sure we're being transparent with you because, but I just want to reassure you that if you understand the fuel markets and how they work and how transportation moves from production to storage to transport to refineries and out to transport to customers all around the world, there is normal sequencing because ships may have come in earlier, later, and there's just a bit of manoeuvring around. So there's genuinely no concern there. And as I'm trying to reassure you, we work within the 3-week window because that's from when it gets from source of origin to New Zealand, and that's what we have got complete reassurance around that. But we also are really reassured and confident because we have our fuel importers providing us with sensitive commercial information that gives us confidence that those orders are confirmed out to the end of May and then planned quite well into June.
Prime Minister.
Sorry, hang on, let's go to Joe. Retail New Zealand is calling for an illicit tobacco task force. Illicit what? Tobacco task force. Is that something you're open to? No, that's not a priority for me right now. Sorry, Joe. Sorry.
In your opening remarks, you made the comment about us living in an unpredictable and volatile world. What or who do you attribute that to?
Well, if you've read my Raisina speech in India, if you've read anything I've talked about in my State of the Nation speech earlier in the year, the Lowy Institute speech I gave in Sydney, it's very clear we're no longer in a benign environment. I've been saying that now for 2 years. We are living increasingly in a multipolar world, not a multilateral world. And we are at an inflection point in the world, and it has changed. And so, you've got an American foreign policy of America first, that's focused on the Western Hemisphere. You've got a China policy that's increasingly focused on the Eastern Hemisphere. You've got a Russia that really changed the game with a focus on Europe. So, let's be clear about it. We have a different global context, and we, as I've said, we're moving from rules to power. We're moving from economics to security. We're moving from efficiency to resilience. Those are the macro trends that we see in geopolitics. But we are going to continue to work and make the case for the rules-based system. But what we have to control is what we can control here at home. And this is an opportunity for New Zealand, frankly. It's an opportunity for us to build greater national security, energy security, economic security here at home and build a better New Zealand over this period of time. Okay, sorry. Sorry?
Will this have a flow-on effect to the budget? Do you think that is the spend going to be a bit more conservative given
Well, again, what we've tried to do is we know there'll be an impact on inflation, we know there'll be an impact on growth. You've seen that even with the Reserve Bank Governor's statement with 3% inflation in Q1, a forecast of 4.2, I think, in Q2. And there'll be a range of other scenarios, but it's very volatile and driven off what's happening with the conflict. But within the budget, we're working through that process right now, and given it's budget sensitive, I won't talk too much about it, but we're going to continue to be financially disciplined and prudent and responsible, because that is the learning of COVID. The last 2 years, we have been dealing with a massive hangover because there was very poor economic management through that period of time that ran up 32-year high levels of inflation, massive interest rate rises, and tripled our debt. And that is what New Zealanders have been wrestling with, is that hangover from that sugar rush where there was lots of short-term gain but lots of long-term pain, and that's what we've been dealing with. And we want to come out of this crisis and pop out of it and continue to do well.
On the Iran war, how concerned are you about the impact on the principle of freedom of navigation, given how heavily our economy relies on?
Yeah, look, I said that last week, was that the freedom of navigation is one of the core principles of international law. We want to make sure that all ocean vessels can navigate the law of the seas, and we've got good clarity around that. What we don't want to see is tolling. That was a particular issue that was raised last week, because actually there's a number of pathways when we're a big exporting nation that if everyone was to divulge, to go down to tolling, that wouldn't be good for New Zealand's exports. So we'll continue to make the case for why freedom of navigation, UNCLOS, and respect to the law of the sea is a key part of international law.
Prime Minister, just the 2 points to move between phases, what ones are officials most concerned about at the moment?
It's just a general assessment. So as I said to you, we're not doing COVID 2.0 here, and what we have is 6 assessment criteria that actually forces our ministerial oversight group. We meet each morning at 7:30, 7:45, and we have a formal meeting every Wednesday evening as well, and we will make an assessment with our officials, with our ministers, on the mix of assessment criteria, whether we think there's anything substantive that would actually trigger us to then have a conversation about moving phases. I think it's a much more intelligent way to go about it, and then what we're doing is saying we want to work really hard on phase 1 and phase 2 so that we never really have to get to phase 3 and 4, but we have to think ahead and be responsible and prudent and build a plan in the eventuality that that could happen, given the massive volatility that exists with this conflict in the Middle East. So I think we're being responsible with an eye on the long term. I'm proud we've got organised early. We've had very good stocks in country. We've got no risk to any fuel disruption at this point in time, and that fuel supply is job number one. I know that's coming with a cost in terms of high fuel prices, but we actually also have to keep an eye on the economy and actually coming out of this crisis quickly and not dealing and creating another hangover like we saw in COVID.
Diplomacy soon heading to Singapore. Is there any chance that we've left this too late, given Lawrence Wong has said a lot of countries are knocking on his door, Australia's just been there? Are we too late? Well,
I think if you have been following what we've been doing with the New Zealand-Singapore relationship over the last year, you'd understand that we have been first out of the blocks to actually, we've upgraded to a comprehensive strategic partnership. You remember when Prime Minister Wong was here last year, he and I talked about our essential supplies treaty, and we have been operating under that. We may not have officially signed it, but we've been operating under that. So I appreciate others are making a rush, but they're playing catch up. We are not playing catch up because we have been well advanced in those conversations. Sorry?
You're confident you'll leave with more than a handshake?
Oh, well, we've got several objectives on that trip in May 1, is obviously to formally sign our essential supplies treaty, but Lawrence and I have agreed that we're working under that from before Christmas. And the second piece is actually we want to elevate the relationship and deepen the relationship with Singapore. And like we have with Australia, which is the only other place we do it, we have an Australia-New Zealand Leadership Forum. We're creating a New Zealand-Singapore Leadership Forum, as we talked about when the Prime Minister visited before Christmas.
Subsidising solar installations to bring down the energy costs for households?
Again, energy policy for us and energy security is about and. We're very interested in rooftop solar. We've done a number of things to make it easier for people to do so. But again, it's about, we want a strategic coal reserve behind Huntly. We've got 1.2 million tonnes there because, we're not going to have a dry year risk. And Kiwis... well, no, I'm just saying we've got an and on energy policy. Tom Day.
Prime Minister, what's your reaction to President Trump criticising the Pope for speaking out against what's been happening in Iran, and also posting that picture of himself where he was depicting himself as Jesus?
Well, I think if you're a person of faith or not faith, I think the image was pretty ridiculous. And I'd just say to you, the Pope and we believe in freedom of speech. That's all I'll say there.
Prime Minister, if we do have a fuel disruption, a serious fuel disruption,
Yep.
something
Henry, you're going to get last question. Yep.
If that happens on a Thursday, will you wait until Monday to tell us, or will you send out a press release saying this?
Henry, I think you'll see that we're trying to communicate with you as much information as dynamically and as quickly as we can. If there was a serious change in any situation, rest assured we're available every day and we'll be making sure we get that information through to you. But for now, I want to continue to reassure New Zealanders that we have fuel supply. We are very confident about that at this point in time, but we also are being prudent and responsible to put ourselves and our heads in the game to imagine a scenario where this crisis does not get resolved, a ceasefire does not hold, conflict continues on, and we actually do get a disruption down the road. And so I think we're doing some good foresight and some good thinking and good planning around that. Okay, team, thanks for your help. Have a good day. See ya.